Okay, the next then is Deputy Clare Daly.
Thanks, Chair, and I'm delighted that you're here, and I'm delighted that there's more people here than was here the last time you were present. But I think the conditions in the room are quite difficult, and I think a lot of people are wilting now, so I'll maybe try and ask a few questions. They may be disjointed, fill in a few gaps for myself. I think there is a certain contradiction maybe between the idea that she always intended to carry out this sweep, that it was just a matter of routine, as the Taoiseach and the Minister for Justice called it, that you were always going to do it. And the idea then that the Minister for Justice and the Taoiseach then said on the one hand it was routine, then on the other that it was sufficiently exceptional under Section 85 that you should have disclosed it to the Minister. Now, was the last sweep that was conducted disclosed to the Minister for Justice? Or do you know it was before your time?
I'm sorry, I probably should remember that, Deputy, but I believe that because in 2007, when we did the first sweep, there wasn't anything found, any cause of concern. So I would imagine that we didn't make any special report about it.
So, if you like, the reason for the apology or the acknowledgement of the wrongdoing, or whatever you want to call it, wasn't that you didn't inform the Minister of the sweep, but that you didn't inform him that something had been found as a result of the sweep. Would that be a correct analysis? Or?
Well, I'll take this. For us to be forced into the level of public discourse that we got ourselves into in the last 2 to 3 days, I feel very much that there was decisions that I made just before Christmas that have put us into that space. So I think it was right at the time to express my regret, and I've done that. And as I say, I think we should try to get on to a place where we can, this is where we are here now, let's move on.
Well, I just want to deal maybe with some of the facts, right? It's indisputable that a kind of an A-list security firm did the sweep for you. It's been disputed by nobody that 3 anomalies were found on or near your premises. It's disputed by nobody that these were capable of breaching your communications security if they were used. The only thing we don't know is whether an actual breach took place. Now, you've indicated, and would you agree, that the evidence of that would be hard to come by, given the advanced level of technology at the moment, but is it not also the case that the one piece of sort of indicative evidence that we do have is that on detection of the one device, it ceased to exist? And could this not indicate that the source was active on discovery in relation to anomaly 2 and the phone call?
As I've said before, Deputy, the business of surveillance is an imprecise area, and it is very difficult if surveillance has been conducted very successfully to have known that it's been done. In relation to these issues, we were left with a number of different suspicious activities. We investigated those activities. In certainly some of our investigations, we left asset in place untouched and examined it. And in other places we repeated tests to see if it would be repeated. In all those areas we didn't, and in the final test, when we tried to put some form of linkage between a couple of the threats, again we didn't get anything coming back on that. So you get to a certain place where we were operating with a lack of proper communication in the way that we were doing some of this. And I would say that it was right and proportionate to do what we did, and it was right and proportionate to get out when we did.
I'm not asking now if you think it was probable that the source was active on discovery, but would it be possible that it was?
It's very possible that if you have...
That's grand. Now, Deputy Wallace asked you whether you'd asked the Minister or the Gardaí whether, because I think in this debate there's been a very careful use of words by the Minister and by yourself out there. There's a formula of words that's been repeated ad nauseum: no definitive evidence of unauthorised technical or electronic surveillance, and everybody kind of does it off-road. It's kind of eerie at this stage. Now, you've confirmed that you didn't ask the Gardaí whether they had conducted lawful surveillance, but it would technically be possible for the Defence Forces to also lawfully conduct surveillance. You haven't asked the Minister that question?
No.
Okay. Do you think you should have, or...? Because we don't now know. Well, we can ask him as well, and we will, but we don't know whether the surveillance was lawful. We can't answer that now.
Well, I think what you've got to realise is that the security experts have detected an external asset. They have an opinion as to what its capability was and what level of security it would need to have had. That's their opinion. What I would say in relation to that is that we have no idea if that particular piece of capability was being used lawfully by any number of people, nor do we have an idea that it was being ranged against our building.
But I think, you know, language is important, right? And you've also said that there was no definitive evidence of any surveillance being conducted by An Garda Síochána. And the Minister himself has said that, and you've openly said that here. Would it not be also the case, though, to say that there's no definitive evidence to say that there wasn't?
You could take that question both ways, exactly where I was before. It's an imprecise situation. We had no further evidence to suggest that it would met a threshold of an offence. What we're left with, unfortunately, is an imprecise and an incomplete picture, which is probably unsatisfactory for everyone.
It could have been, I suppose, is the answer. And I suppose one of the questions we will pose is, how are we going to get to those answers? Because I think the reasonable people watching this are of the view, well, who credibly other than that could it have been? You've kind of indicated, and I'll ask you a question in a minute about the media, that there's an internal leak inside giving it to the media, so why would they bother having to commit surveillance if they can get the information anyway? I don't think it's the complainants. Who has an interest in surveillance of GSOC? It's a practical, presumably the people who are the butt of the complaints that you're investigating.
Just to say that when the chairman responds, your time will have elapsed. Do you want to add another question?
I'll ask one question on the media issue. You said 7 people had access to your report, the secret report, which you fear might end up with the media. What format was that report in? Was it electronic? Were there hard copies? Who had access to the hard copies? And can you explain, if the people who did that report are the A-list surveillance team that we all recognise that they are, how would they have got the basis of the report so wrong as to contradict your interpretation of why you employed them, and in their report is completely different with that? How would that be if they're sort of that A-list, like, you know?
Deputy, we are into territory now where we will have a current inquiry on that, and I think you know, questions of that nature may prejudice that inquiry. So I want to be open, but I would say I need to be careful of what I say. I think we've probably said enough about who might have had it. What I would say is that we are and have launched an internal inquiry. We'll take it where we can go to it. And as I say, if we move forward, we want other assistance, then we may well ask for that in the future.